Good. Wow.
How'd you get here?
Here we go. Some people think that morality shouldn't come into business. That, hey, whenever right and wrong says, you've just got to do what's right for the company. So they still believe in morality, they just have a different belief about when
it applies.
Similarly,
Yeah, that's right.
my Trump voting friend doesn't lack morals. He's not an animal. When he says politics is personal, he just means that there isn't a universal moral standard. There's no one way that everybody should vote, just a diversity of opinions. His daughter evidently disagrees and thinks there is a universal moral standard that applies in every voting booth. That voting Republican in this particular election, at least, was morally wrong, and she doesn't want to associate with anyone who did. So it's not that she has morals and he doesn't. They both have morals. The disagreement is about when they should come into play.
It's an interesting way to phrase that, I think. This is gonna become a thing. I have a feeling this is gonna become. I'm gonna have issues with this across the board. I just know it.
Now, for Nietzsche, it is a mistake to think that morality is universal and applies to everyone.
Yep, this is true.
He was quite comfortable saying that for some people, the rules are just different, especially if they are a better class of person.
No. God damn, I forgot how bad this was. First minute and a half is just a fucking story, and then it's like... It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay. Nietzsche did not believe that... wow, this is... It's really difficult to have this conversation because, again, if I were to say, Nietzsche did believe that morality is different for different people of different classes. I also would be hard-pressed to disagree with that statement because the material reality of people in different classes is that, by nature, they are enabled to have different moralities. For example, a slave in the South did not have the freedom to willingly marry anyone they wanted. The white slave owners did. Is that because they were a better class of people? Yes. Is it because they were better? No. But they were in the better class? Yes. Because that's how society valued them and placed these rules. So how do you respond to someone who's taking something in the proper words? And I think it is... I don't have a way to disagree with that in that sense. It's like, did Nietzsche believe this? Yes, Nietzsche believed this. Like, I'm not gonna say otherwise, Nietzsche, but I believe this. I fucking believe this. Who doesn't believe this? Morality of different classes enables different classes. This is the problem with these people. Yeah, she's loose with her terminology. She doesn't have a fucking terminology. I appreciate that you think that, but this is bad. Would shocking to know Abigail is the most philosophically literate person on her film criticism podcast, Kill James Bond? No? I would assume that Abigail gets her kicks out of pretending to be intellectual. So she'd probably put herself around people who don't question her.
Nietzsche definitely believed in hierarchy.
I believe hierarchy exists. Do I believe in hierarchy? It's like asking if I believe in Christianity. It exists.
He was pretty much a white supremacist.
No, he was not. He really wasn't. He... I'm going to have to do this for everything, aren't I? Nietzsche meant it descriptively, but it seems so much of what she portrays him saying is prescriptive, which is blatantly untrue. That's a really great way to phrase it. That's a really specifically good way to phrase it. Descriptive or prescriptive. And this is an important philosophical distinction. You have to be careful with how you phrase things. And again, what Nietzsche's doing was very new philosophy. And so was Spinoza. Like, the tradition was new. We have a billion books out there and AIs that can write this now. But even still, descriptions versus prescriptions. I say, white people have more money and wealth than black people. No one's going to disagree with that statement. I mean, I would love to see someone try. That Elon Musk alone has more wealth than everyone else. So, like, white people have more wealth than black people. But if I say, well, white people ought to have more wealth than black people, or white people have more wealth than black people. White people make more money than black people. You get that line where it's like, is it prescriptive or descriptive? Poof. Oof. But pretty much a white supremacist. Let's see if she substantiates it.
We just did a video about that.
We just debunked that entire video. So, she will not be substantiating it.
If you're curious, you can go and check it out. Now, my
We
top-voting friend is...
So, in other words, he's pretty much a white supremacist. I have no reason to believe that whatsoever at this point. There you go. JJ Oswald, there's the rub. They act as though they've read things and understood them. You've heard Deleuze references. Oh, I'm so sorry. See, this is why I'm sorry. If you send me the Deleuze references, if you've heard them, I'll be happy to tear them apart. Because you think this Nietzsche shit gets under my skin, and it does. The Deleuze shit fucking really gets under my skin. Like, really fucking gets under my skin. Really badly.
Not a white supremacist.
By the way, Nietzsche was not a white supremacist. Like, as a thing.
In fact, he's black. But he does believe in hierarchy, I think it's fair to say.
I think it's fair to say.
He thinks he has some authority over his daughter, especially whilst he's still supporting her. He might not call it authority. He might say that he has a responsibility to raise her right and prepare her for the
Just
world.
These words don't even work.
It's clear that he expects some amount of deference from her as part of that relationship, and he regards that deference as flowing naturally to him.
Like, this is such a broken way to talk about how people talk about each other. Jesus Christ. Like, I don't even know this person, and I'm pretty sure this is probably not an accurate discussion.
Despite the fact that his daughter is, in fact, an adult. In other words, in his mind, there is a hierarchy, and so the rules are different. Morality doesn't always apply.
I believe right here she's not talking about Nietzsche, she's talking about her friend. But again, it's written badly, she talks badly, and she doesn't infer things properly or talk with proper intonation because she's not a good actress and she's not a good speaker. So it puts you in a really difficult place of knowing exactly who she's speaking about. It's like when she went through that whole thing and said, there's a word for that, genealogy. But that's not what she was talking about. She was referring back to the thing she started with because it's poorly written and the subject of sentences is not the subject of sentences. Because no one did a pass of this with the AP Style Guide.
And if there's a
learn the AP Style Guide if you're going to be a writer. It's important.
disagreement about when it does, he should have the final say because he's the dad. If you're more inclined to view everybody as equal, then you might not have a problem with saying, no, actually the rules are the same for everyone and there is a universal moral standard, but that is not the way that Nietzsche...
No! Oh, God. Oh, that turned on me really quick. Did that turn on anyone else really fast? Okay. She's talking about a father who, in the relationship with the daughter, takes care of her and in return expects deference in some capacity. And she says...
when it does, he should have the final say because he's the dad. If you're more inclined to view everybody as equal, then you might not have a problem with saying, no, actually the rules are the same for everyone.
So this is a really, really, really bad misunderstanding of universalist and individualist and equality and egalitarian realities. The rules should not be the same for everyone. Egalitarianism is not saying that the rules should be the same for everyone. That's not egalitarianism. That is not. Right now in America, the rules are the same for everyone, right? Everyone gets a free shot. But of course, if you start in poverty or as a poor black man, the odds of you in one zip code versus another becoming successful versus a white man, even if the rules are equal, it's not enough because the rules weren't equal, because we exist in a time that is after other things. Things happened and we exist now and we come out of those things. So saying, well, now the rules are all equal. Now. That isn't egalitarianism. It's not universalism, not leftism. This is reactionary politics. This is reactionary politics.
And there is a universal moral standard. But that is not the way that Nietzsche would look at it.
Here's the short version. If she is saying that a universal moral standard is a good thing, and Nietzsche wouldn't look at it, that's why it's a bad thing, that she's not a leftist in any capacity at all. This is horrifying.
Here's another example. Nancy Mace, US Representative for North Carolina. She said some very nasty things about trans people and tried to have us banned from using public bathrooms. She was confronted in her office by AOC. And AOC said, hey, don't you think this is kind of bad? Don't you think this is kind of hurtful?
This happened.
I mean, you shouldn't say
those things.
People,
yeah.
Right? And Nancy Mace replied, whatever, it's a game.
Points on the board. Remember the end of the last video? She said, you know who's fighting cynicism? MAGA. And she's using this example of a MAGA person being excessively cynical and nihilistic.
To me, that doesn't suggest a lack of morality so much as a disagreement about when.
It's because you're stupid. Okay. If she says, I don't care, it's points on a board, this is because she is dealing with unbridled political power and an understanding cynically that the only thing that matters in the end is what the laws encourage. The idea that she doesn't believe in a universalist moral message because of this is silly. Silly. MAGA is about that. That's the thing they're doing. Jesus Christ.
When it applies and to whom. To AOC, morality obviously applies to trans people. Like, you shouldn't say those sorts of horrible things about us or try and have our rights restricted.
By this logic, it should apply to pedophiles too, and that's not what AOC is saying or what you're saying either. The idea of, again, the universalist message underneath this is being lost, and Jesus goddamn Christ. This using, so frustrating.
But to Nancy Mace, apparently, we don't really come under the scope of morality.
You do. You're immoral. She doesn't care about you. She considers you immoral. She said this. Just points on a board. She doesn't care about being mean to people. She sees being mean to trans people as scoring political points towards an end. This doesn't mean she's not consistent.
It's just a game. Points on the board. Now, it would be nice if we could all just agree to disagree about whether morality applies to, say, voting. It would be nice if families around the world could come together over the holidays and not fight about stuff.
What?
But there is a universal standard that we are all bound by. There is something that affects every single one of us, and that is the amount of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere. I think about this quite often.
Okay.
Some of the classic philosophers we still read today were writing at a time when people didn't know about global warming. I mean, it's all well and good to champion individuality and individual perspectives, but we do, in fact, all live on one very precarious planet, and our actions, including voting, do have an effect on whether or not it remains habitable.
I regret my decision to watch this.
It certainly seems like
all of you should regret giving me money to watch this.
Things should matter.
The good news is I think we'll get through this faster because this is just absurd nonsense.
From everybody's perspective. I mean, isn't that just science? Well, here's a little story about science.
Okay, let's do it.
Last year, I was in Montana, which is a part of planet Earth. I went into a tea shop in Montana.
Okay.
Whilst I was waiting for my order, I eavesdropped.
Coffee shop that has tea. I've been to Montana. Not a lot of tea shops. Helena doesn't have a high-end tea scene. If you want a great tea moment, by the way, I would recommend. You go to big cities. New York's got one. I grew up in Denver. Brown Palace has a tea set. It's amazing. If you want to do the proper, afternoon tea thing, it's good. It's pretty amazing.
Dropped on the conversation that the couple next to me were having. Apologies if you were that couple. Your conversation was just too fascinating.
I'm sure it was.
They were talking about vaccines. The woman was saying that she didn't trust vaccines. She didn't want her kids.
This isn't about morality. And also, so I have an idea I want to share. I think that maybe we should get away from morality and sort of not talk about things in terms of that, but instead of maybe getting, I don't know, beyond the idea of good and evil. Someone should write a book about that.
Kids to get any vaccines, and here's some quotes of things she actually said that I surreptitiously wrote down in my phone.
That's
you
great.
Trust Western medicine because it's worked for you, but for me, Western medicine killed my mom.
I don't know what's happening. I feel like I'm fucking having a stroke right now. Like, what in the fuck?
I trust my kids' bodies to do what they're meant to do. I'm Cherokee. My ancestors were Cherokee, so I'm very in touch with nature and natural healing.
Well, we already know how she feels about indigenous conquered people. Remember, she called them incels and losers? I'm not joking. Can everyone who was there say I'm not joking so that everyone knows I'm not lying? Because that sounds like something someone would make up. But I mean it. I'm not joking. Thank you. It was fucking... It's like one of the worst things I've seen in a while. It was like, what?
People say to me, oh, you reject science? You want polio to come back? And they're so stupid. Polio was cured because we cleaned up the water. It wasn't the vaccine, so I actually know more science than you. That last point is false, by the way.
What?
The cleaning up the water did help with the polio.
It actually significantly helped the polio situation. But again, if you didn't live through polio, it's very difficult to talk about how you understand it or how it was explained. It's one of the challenges of science communicators. It would be like, for example, if someone wanted to tell you about everything and instead of reading the books, they just spouted nonsense that they sort of had gotten secondhand from someone else who wrote them a script, and they did 2 pieces and one was on Nebula, and they decided to do the whole thing. And no one learned anything, but they came away with really bad understandings, and then at a coffee table 25 fucking years from now, some asshole's going to say, well, actually, Nietzsche was racist. I'll have to punch them, and then I'll go to jail.
Polio situation, but we did actually beat polio with a vaccine. I'd be doing like misinformation if I didn't.
We did, but it's also important, on the other side of that, to just mention, Bruno Latour did a book called Laboratory Life, which is an ethnology of how scientific facts are constructed and how they're not just simply scientific facts. The guy who wrote the intro for that and pushed for the book, Jonas Salk, guy behind the polio vaccine, because scientific facts are not that fucking simple.
I was really struck by how often that woman centered herself and her own perspective in the conversation they were having. All of the things she said were about her identity as a woman, as a daughter.
Lucy, am I now more MAGA than before? You know what? She also hasn't defined MAGA. Let's also be fair there. Because again, this is all id poll bullshit. That's all this is. There's nothing critically thinking through here. So maybe I'm MAGA. Maybe I'm woke. Maybe I'm both. Maybe I'm neither. Maybe I'm MAGA. I'm wokaga. That's what that is, wokaga.
As a mother, as a person of Indigenous American.
I love that. How often that woman centered herself. That's what I've been saying about.
And even that last remark about polio was about her, in contrast to some imaginary other person who knew less.
We just watched a whole video where some woman did that.
Than her. She
Yeah.
talks a lot more about herself than she did about things like facts or evidence or studies, and I'm not necessarily bashing her for that. I'm just noticing it and saying that it's interesting. Philosophers might
John Hart, I will bear witness to Insulgate. Thank you for the two pounds.
call that perspectivism, and we find a lot of it in Friedrich Nietzsche. Facts and science only matter.
I am really going to have a hard time here in about 5 minutes, because at this point, and tell me if anyone else is getting a different vibe, this video is going to be about how perspectivism is MAGA. Which, if that happens, that might break me.